Right, welcome to the National Cooperative Soil Survey Partners Seminar. This is Soil Data for GIS Part 1. So excited to have everyone join us today. We are thrilled to bring two amazing speakers. We've got Kyle Stevens and Alex Stumhold, I hope I said your name correctly, who are going to be talking to us all about soil expertise in the new SSURGO portal and also all of our other SSURGO options for accessing our data. This seminar is booked for 2 hours. I do not believe that we'll go the full time, but we just keep the calendar invites the same. We've got tons of folks from across the USDA, partners, and the public here joining us today. And we're just thrilled to have everybody here. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kyle to introduce himself, and then Alex to introduce herself, and then Alex will be our first speaker. So Kyle.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I'm excited to present SSURGO Portal to everybody today, and for Alex to present SSURGO and GSURGO information. I'm Kyle Stevens. I'm the National Database Manager out of the National Soil Survey Center. I'm a field soil scientist by training, though. I spent about 15 years in the Northwest working on initial and update soil surveys, mostly initial, both out in the field office and in the regional office. In the last 5 years, I've been with the National Soil Survey Center, focused on all of our databases and applications that have been built out over the last 30 or 40 years by many people that have since retired or moved on to other jobs. And I've been very involved with a team of developers over the last 3 or 4 years with a heavy focus on the new SSURGO Portal application, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. And I'm also currently the acting national leader for Soil Business Systems until October they fill that position. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks Kyle. Alex, come on, and then for folks who've just joined us in the chat, we do have a poll running to see if you can let us know where you're from, and folks have done a great job letting us know also in the chat where they are around the country. So appreciate folks who've been able to answer the poll and then also been able to let us know where they're from. So Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Alex Stum. I am also with the National Soil Survey Center and the Soil Business Systems Group, and I am the GIS specialist and soil scientist, and initially started off doing an initial soil survey in some couple western states, Utah and Wyoming. Took a pause for graduate school and came back as a GIS specialist. And my responsibility now, more or less, is to attempt to fill the shoes, the rather large shoes of Steve Peasley, and also. So that involves being presentations like this where we present tools and methods for accessing our SSURGO database, but also have other duties related to digital soil mapping and various sundry topics related to, soil plant science division that come my way. So that's probably enough about me, and I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Right, that appears to be working. So this presentation is meant to be largely a kind of a very broad introduction to SSURGO, and then as to what it is, and then later on we'll present some tools to help you access SSURGO. This is a very introductory seminar overall. Some of you may have seen some of this material in the past, but hopefully, I'm positive by the end of this, you will all see something new that should excite you as Kyle and I present towards the end with some of the new tools available. Let's see here. So again, a brief description of what we'll be doing is I'll give a brief overview of SSURGO. Kyle will give we'll present some pretty exciting advancements with the tool, the SSURGO Portal tool application that they've developed. I'll give the state of the soil data development toolbox with a little bit of demonstration, and then we might wrap up with a little bit on GNATSCO. So SSURGO, or also as it's officially known, the Soil Survey Geographic Database, I guess SSGD just didn't roll off the tongue like SSURGO. So we came up with SSURGO instead, but it's the official data for the United States and the island jurisdictions. I say jurisdictions because not all of those island areas that we've mapped are U.S. territories anymore. Some of them still are. And so here they all are. The ones in green, or I should say the darkest green, are surveys that are completed. And the ones in lime green are incomplete. Their work's being done. And then there's about 150 that are not complete, that are in progress, and with the goal to be done by 2026. So the National Cooperative Soil Survey has a rich 125-year legacy of gathering soil survey information. It's an invaluable investment that we and our partners have created through nearly 1 million documented field observations, and that are chock full of thousands and thousands of soil attributes, which makes for a data set that has hundreds of millions of records. So it is a very, very deep, broad data set. If you ever feel overwhelmed looking at it, that's partly why, but it's also an invaluable data set because of those reasons. So it's high quality, as it's based off of many standards. We have the keys of soil taxonomy, the soil survey manual, which kind of gives the kind of nuts and bolts of how to do soil survey. We have the field book for describing and sampling soils, which is an invaluable resource when you're out in the field and you're trying to remember which 3-letter code is you need for plasticity, etc. Then there's the soil survey handbook, which gives guidance on policy and technical matters from start to finish in the soil survey process. We have the laboratory manuals, which are so critical for our soil characterization labs and for our field folks out in the field doing laboratory work, and many other references. So there's also rigorous quality control and systematic correlation that occurs. It's also important to note that this product is ever evolving. It's constantly being improved every year. We'll talk more about that. And the work or the collaboration of tens of thousands of field soil scientists and ecologists and other scientists, and which translates to millions of hours of tacit knowledge that's encoded in our database. And it's also quite popular. It's queried over 125 million times a year. So as you can see, it's a very important data set. I think many of you understand that because that's why you're here. It provides important insights to the work you do. So it contains SSURGO. When we're talking about SSURGO data, there's 2 types of data. There's the spatial side, which are the soil polygons that show the location of soil map units. And there's the tabular side. And this is where the information of the chemical, physical soil properties are stored, and such as bulk density and pH and soil texture and so many others. There's also the interpretations that are derived from these soil properties that are encoded in that tabular information. There's also vegetative information, crop productivity and ecological classes and forage suitability, etc. Lots of various vegetation properties and interpretations. And of course, there's the broader soil taxonomic information that's based off of the 12 soil orders, and there's subgroups and grade groups, etc. So it's important to keep in mind that SSURGO is broken into it's a relational database, and so there are many levels in the hierarchy of this data structure. And so level 1 is the soil survey areas themselves. There are 3,373 county or county size soil survey areas last year. There's a few that split this year, so there'll be a few more in the coming year. They cover all the United States and island territories. Each soil survey has been mapped successively. And this is essentially, as you can see in this map of the continental United States, kind of a pattern might pop out. You may see that in the eastern United States, generally the soil survey areas conform fairly strictly to county boundaries. There's a few combined. But in the West, it's a little different. You see that some of the survey boundaries conform to other federal jurisdictions, such as national forests or national parks and other jurisdictions, and also counties. So the point to remember is that a soil survey is the first subset or level of the SSURGO data set. And to keep in mind that the default SSURGO is stored and delivered as soil survey areas, as individual soil survey areas. But within each soil survey area, there are a unique subset of soil data. And that brings us to the next level, the map unit. So for each soil survey area, there is a legend, and these legends are made up of map units. And here on this example on the right, we see a legend report from Spokane, Washington Soil Survey. And each map unit within this survey has a unique map unit symbol. As you can, that's the code on the right side, and each map unit is either a numeric or alphanumeric symbol, and with that is an accompanying map unit name that succinctly describes the soils in each map unit. So a map unit points to a set of disparate polygons that delineate the landscape into areas of with common soil characteristics. So here I've highlighted in red several soil polygons that are mapped as map unit 3114. And from the name, we can understand that the expected soils in these delineations are rocky soil series and the 4-mound soil series. We also learned that the slopes typically range 0 to 15%. Note that each map unit has a map unit key, or what we call the MU key. This key uniquely identifies this map unit from all others in the SSURGO database, as there may indeed be other 3114s and other soil surveys in the SSURGO data set. As we've referred to on the previous slide, map units represent repeating soil landform patterns. Note that in this map unit, 3114, it occurs mostly on these elevated surfaces above the alluvial valleys. Within each of these polygons, the same relative soil components are expected to occur. Which brings us to soil components, the next level, level 3 in the SSURGO data structure. Each map unit has one or more soil components, which represent soils with similar properties and characteristics, such as maybe ranging clay content or color or climatic setting and many, many other characteristics they may have in common. Components, excuse me, components include non-soil physical bodies such as water and rock outcrop also. Each map unit can have major and minor components. You're already familiar with the major components from map unit 3114. The major components typically make up 10 to 25% depending on the distinctiveness of those components. But recall that in 3114, the name had Rockley and 4-mound in it in the map unit name, and those are a reference to those major map unit components. So here we have, again, just showing an example of a delineation with a map unit symbol, and in that map unit delineation, one would expect to find the Rockley and 4-mound series most extensively. And so here, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see a unique pattern within the map unit 3114. It's a pretty neat pattern, actually. So the mounded areas are the 4-mound soils, which are deep, lush deposits atop basalt. And between these mounds are the Rockley soils, which are shallow mantle of soil over basalt bedrock. So we can see what I think is a pretty interesting relationship there. So recall the major components are used in naming of the map units. We can see that Rockley and 4-mound make up 55 and 25% of the map unit respectively, but there can be found other soils within the map unit 3114. The soils that make up the remaining 20% are referred to as minor components. Each map unit has unique formulation and composition of soils. There are the minor components. And that brings us to the final level that we'll be talking about today, and that's the soil horizons. So as we dig deeper into the database, we reach level 4, and each soil can have one or more soil horizons. Soils are typically described to 200 centimeters or until bedrock or a density feature is reached, and some depth below that. It is within these horizon tables that unique soil chemical, physical properties are found. So again, this is just a stylized representation of the soil showing, a typical orientation of soil horizons. And of course, my more preferred view of soil is the actual picture of soil showing, again, that A horizon going down into the B's, into the C material below, the substratum. And so each one of these layers, as you can see, this one has you can already see there's differences in color, rock fragments, and you can probably infer there's also differences in chemistry. And so all that information is stored in the horizon table. So let's talk about where to go to get help. So I recall my first encounters with SSURGO database. I was like many of you, quite confused. Like the soils they represent, the database is very complex and very rich. So to help, we've provided means to interpret the data and provide tools that enable the aggregation of these many to one relationships that I've just described. And so that's one of our purposes that we serve in the Business Center, is to provide you as customers with ways of interpreting our information and tools to aggregate and analyze that information to help you go from that horizon level to the map unit level, so that you can represent that information thematically on a map. So how do you access this data digitally? So Web Soil Survey is the alternative to the old paperback books, which are still floating around luckily in many offices. It's good reading material. So Web Soil Survey provides an interactive interface to explore data and make reports, but has a limited scope. You're not able to download, or at least not at once, or run a report of the entire United States or even a whole state. Soil Data Access is a very powerful application that will deliver soil information via SQL queries, but isn't necessary for the faint of heart who might be more novice or aren't so expert in their SQL. And so we have provided a couple of other tool sets that we'll be talking about in this seminar that are more for kind of the intermediate user, one that interfaces with the Esri mapping products or applications, and then one that's a standalone that we call SSURGO Portal. So I am looking for one. Oh, there it is. Okay, it showed up. So the actual SSURGO data is stored on a secure SQL server database hosted by the USDA. And Soil Data Access and Web Soil Survey act as kind of intermediary applications, which will serve you data from the Soil Data Mart itself. Furthermore, Web Soil Survey has a subpage where downloadable SSURGO data packages are hosted, already extracted and packaged from the Soil Data Mart. And so it's important to note, though, that these downloadable data packages are not networked. They're not connected to the Soil Data Mart once they've been exported and extracted. So therefore, they should be thought of as static upon creation. So each SSURGO data set can be downloaded singly as individual soil survey areas as a zipped file from Web Soil Survey. But if you're interested in multiple soil surveys, that can be quite tedious. We have tools available that can expedite that. But let's talk about the structure a little more. So when you first get that zipped file, you unzip it, there'll be a single directory in there, and it will have a two-letter abbreviation, which stands for, followed by a three-digit or code at the end. This is the area symbol of the soil surveys. Of course, that abbreviation is, as you can tell, is tied to the state or territory from which that soil survey is from. And then the number is, again, these surveys were made successively, so that number is arbitrary, generally speaking. There's some code there with 600 series, et cetera, but that's generally just an arbitrary code. And within that directory are two more directories, the spatial and the tabular, with a few other files related to metadata and a template database if you got that version. And so let's look at the spatial and tabular a little further. So the tabular data has 68 text files within it. This is where a lot of the the meat of the data is, and it's where the interpretations and properties are. And then there's the spatial directory, which has 6 shape files in it. And the shape files themselves are just that. They're just spatial data. There is very little information in their attribute tables as far as soil data is concerned. And so looking at this, the spatial data, there are 2 primary shape files that we'll focus on. That's the soil MU_A and the soil SA_A shape files, which represent the soil map unit polygons and the soil survey area boundary, respectively. And in this format, with the tabular and the text files and the spatial data represented as shape files, it's not very useful. It's very difficult to explore and familiarize yourself with these data. And so what is needed to make this data pop is a template database that relates all these data tables together. And we also need an engine that simplifies the analysis of these data, so that thematic and choropleth maps. Colin and I are each going to highlight a couple of these different tool sets to do just that. And before we do that, I first want to point out one last point, that recall that the SSURGO data sets are not static. And once downloaded, they're, let me back that up. Soil surveys themselves, the SSURGO data set is not static, but once you download it, you have a static version of that dynamic data set. So it's important to remember that once a year, these data are updated through what we call the annual soils refresh. And so to have the official data, you need to refresh your data set annually as these 3,000 plus data sets, minor or to major updates may occur. And so this happens on October 1st. In fact, behind the scenes, that process is ongoing now. Our state soil scientists are reviewing and staging the tabular data. The GIS specialists have already staged the spatial data. And here shortly, there will be an annual marriage of those two behind the scenes, and that data will then be pushed out to Soil Data Mart, and you'll be able to refresh your own static database. So with that, I'll pause for questions related to the SSURGO itself.
There were some questions in the chat, but Kyle covered them, so that's awesome.
It looks like
Thank you, Kyle. Is there any other questions? I'll answer your continuing education credit at the end.
Okay.
Otherwise, any questions on what Alex just presented? Okay, I think we're good.
Very good. Kyle, hand it off to you then.
Great. Thanks, Alex. That was awesome. I just want to highlight one thing. Alex pointed out that in the beginning that there's roughly 1 million points in our database sites where we visited and collected soils. And he was talking about the amount of data that went SSURGO. And I don't have the number of actual sites that were used to create SSURGO. Nobody does it, and we could estimate it. And I actually don't even have those estimates in front of me. I forget. We kind of came up with some numbers, but I would say that's probably in the ballpark of 5% of the data collected. You know, maybe even significantly less if you think about the amount of observations that go into making a soil survey. If you're somebody that worked on a soil survey, the vast majority of the XY sites that we've visited, you know, the spots on the ground, whether you're actually collecting a head-on description or a quick note or just making an observation, the vast majority of those are gone. I mean, I've thrown some of those out myself years ago, and some of you probably have done the same thing. You know, actual even head-on descriptions just never went into the database, as well as all the little pinpricks on maps. So I'd like to highlight the amount of data that went into our database. But that's enough said. I'm going to switch over to SSURGO Portal now. So again, I'm the National Database Manager for the National Soil Survey Center. And my real job these days for the last few years is to be something called a government product owner, which means that I'm the business person from the Soil and Plant Science Division, along with Tammy Cheever, who's on here, working with a large team of database engineers and application developers. And we're supporting our current complex system of delivering soils data. The soils data system, we've been told anecdotally, is the most complex system in the USDA. I've heard that several times, so there's no way to measure that, but it's numerous databases and applications to create the soils data, archive it, and deliver it. And there's just a lot behind the scenes that we support. But in addition to that O&M, we've been working with the developers on this new product called SSURGO Portal to replace some aging infrastructure that I'll talk about in a little bit. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to try and put up a couple polls here that with some very brief questions to gauge knowledge from people. So the first question is, let's see if this launches. Have you used Soil Data Viewer, yes or no? And if you don't know what it is, just answer no. Just kind of get a sense of the audience here. So 70 people, 100 people responded. It looks like we're getting about 75% of you have used Soil Data Viewer. That's good. All right, great. And it's starting to come down a little bit because some of you are probably trying to figure out what the heck Soil Data Viewer is. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's something that's been around for a few years. Okay, so I'm going to move down to the next question just because of time here. You can go ahead and keep responding if you'd like. The next one will be, and Alex might be interested in this one, have you used the SSURGO database? And this is both, you could, if you just open the SSURGO database, that's fine. If you've also used the supporting tools to make maps with it, that's fine too. And if you don't know what SSURGO is, you'll learn about it in a little bit. And so a little less than Soil Data Viewer. It's kind of what I would expect. Actually, the number's quite high though, so that's good. So we're looking at about 60% of the folks here have used SSURGO. That's great, Alex. That's good news. Okay, and so we think you'll also like the SSURGO Portal I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So then on one more, and this I expect much lower numbers. Let's see. Have you used our new SSURGO Portal beta application? And of course, that's what I'll be focused on in my talk. And the no's are flying in here. And I know most of you probably haven't used it. It's been out there for about a year. It's kind of incomplete, hence the beta tag, and we haven't pushed it very hard yet. But in the future, we think you will be using it, and those yeses and nos will flip here sometime in 2025 once we get out a nice new shiny version of this application that we're working towards. Okay, thanks everyone for entertaining me there. I'm going to switch over to my presentation now and share my screen. And Corey, can you confirm that you can see this, or Alex?
We're not seeing it yet.
As I'm sharing.
There it goes. Popped up. Now we
Okay.
see all of PowerPoint. You just have to put it in presentation. There we go.
Okay.
Looks great.
All right. Let me know if there's any latency, like if things seem off. I actually had to switch to a hotspot. I had some home network issues while Alex was presenting, so hopefully this is fine. Okay, I'm on to, can you see the agenda slide, Corey?
We're on the title slide.
You're still in the title, so there's a little
Now it's
latency
on
here.
agenda. Yep.
Okay.
Now we're on agenda.
All right. I am going to just take 1 second here and try and switch back to my home network. Bear with me, everybody.
No
So I'm going
problem.
to disconnect and probably reconnect here. So I'll disappear.
Perhaps the latency was why it looks like Christopher in the chat wasn't able to see the presentation, but it looks like Kyle's going to try again.
Okay, Corey, am I back?
You're back, but your screen hasn't refreshed. Oh, now it looks like it's going faster.
All right, let me know when you see agenda and then I'm going to jump in.
We see agenda.
Okay, all right. Hopefully there's no latency here. All right, and just holler if there is. Okay, so I'm going to give an overview of the new SSURGO this talk. And I'm going to talk about what it is and why we needed it, why we needed to work on this. And then that ties right in to our existing SSURGO tools. And I'm going to talk about what they are kind of at a very high level. I won't spend a lot of time on them. These are things for working with that SSURGO data package that Alex talked about and the complexity of it, that soil data viewer and other things. And then some of the limitations with those. And then I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit on SSURGO Portal Beta. Not too many slides, but I'll give a little bit more details about this current version that's publicly available, that's been out there since last October. And then I'm going to talk about this new one that's an enhanced version of Beta that just came into my hands from the development team about a week ago, that I'm going to also allow all of you to get a copy of, that has some really improved features. So it's SSURGO Portal Beta, but it's got some great new features. Now, it's not fully tested or vetted yet. It's not published yet, which is why I'm talking about both of them. Eventually, that one on the top on the right there, SSURGO Portal Beta, that will just go away and be replaced by the enhanced one in a couple months. But I wanted to give you guys, particularly this audience, the opportunity to get the enhanced version. And then I'm going to talk about where we want to go. This isn't developed yet. It's under development, but this is SSURGO Portal 1.0. This has all the bells and whistles. There's a lot that we want to pack into this, and that'll come out sometime in 2025, hopefully early 2025, in replacing the beta stuff. And then I'm going to do 2 live demos. I'm going to do a live demo of the beta. This is the one you can get today. And I'm going to do a live demo of the SSURGO Portal Beta Enhanced. Corey, would you be able to post the link to the SSURGO Portal webpage in the chat, by the way?
I will right now.
For anybody that wants to play around with that while I'm going through the talk, and I'll show that webpage later too. Okay, so why did we make this thing called SSURGO Portal? Well, at the highest level, it's to replace some old infrastructure in our soils data ecosystem. The databases and applications we use to create soils and deliver soils data have been produced and supported for nearly 4 decades. And in there are some tools for working with SSURGO that are over 20 years old. They are Soil Data Viewer and the Microsoft Access database, SSURGO template database. And these things are still viable, but barely, and they're on life support. And so we have identified, my predecessors, the people that have retired, identified that they needed to replace some years ago. And they handed that off to me and the development team and Tammy and said, figure out how to build some replacements for these. And then when we got into it, we also realized we wanted to improve some things. We wanted to remove software license requirements. We didn't want our customers to have to pay for anything. They don't have to pay for the SSURGO data. We don't want them to have to pay to use the tools to work with the SSURGO data. And then we want to build a little bit more resilience into the product. We want to make them more dynamic and so they can be updated more frequently. So what I mean by that is right now we're kind of constrained with our SSURGO tools. If I decided to add a table to SSURGO or a new column to one of the tables in SSURGO, it's a problem because of the downstream tools. They expect a certain schema. So we're trying to build a little bit more resiliency in there by making it a more dynamic product that's easier to update. And I think we've done some of that. And then we're going to have more enhanced functionality. Specifically, we're going to cover much larger geographic areas than the current tools that we're going to replace. All of the country, you'll be able to use SSURGO Portal to make maps for the entire country at once if you want. And then also give you lots of different file types you can work with after you run Soil Data Viewer. You may want your outputs to be in different file types like text or CSV or JSON, GeoJSON or GeoTIFFs or shapefiles or whatever you're interested in. We're going to try and give you a menu of options. So again, really SSURGO Portal, it's the main reason we made it. It's the eventual replacement for the Microsoft SSURGO Access template database. Note eventual, if you're a user of this product, it will continue to be out there for some time. I'm not sure when it'll go away, and we will give you plenty of notice and try and work with our customers before we decommission this. We might even phase it out slowly. And then it's also going to replace Soil Data Viewer, which has a much shorter shelf life and has much bigger issues. And also, it's an alternative for GSURGO, which has some issues now that Alex will be speaking about. Not so much maybe the problems, but some of his work on it. As he said, he inherited GSURGO from Steve Peasley. Alex is now all things GSURGO, and we're very happy to have him. If Alex wasn't here, I think GSURGO might be on its way out the door, but I think he can do a lot of great things with GSURGO. So we'll see what he has in mind. But for the time being, SSURGO Portal is a very viable alternative for GSURGO. And frankly, SSURGO Portal's modeled off of a lot of what was in GSURGO. Steve Peasley, who was really integral in creating and supporting GSURGO, also fed all the business requirements into the document for SSURGO Portal. So he was behind a lot of what we ended up doing with SSURGO Portal, and it's based on GSURGO. So the Microsoft Access template, what is this? Well, if you're not familiar with it, I imagine many of you are because it's been out there for 20 years. And you can go to Web Soil Survey and get it when you download SSURGO. You remember Alex said you go to Web Soil Survey, you download a SSURGO data package. Included in there by default is one of these template databases. It's empty. Template means that it has tables pre-designed. You can see those on the left over here. They're all ready to accept SSURGO information. And so you can go ahead and point at your tabular SSURGO information that you downloaded from Web Soil Survey right here, and then load the data into these tables here and put all the records into these tables. The tables are ready to accept it. And then very importantly, it creates all the connections between the tables. You know, Alex mentioned that SSURGO is a relational database. You're looking at it here. It's chaotic. It's crazy. It's hard to look at. It's hard to deal with. It's hard for me to deal with. And I'm the database manager. It's just too much for us to process, to deal with all these one-to-many relationships, and the database makes all these connections amongst the tables. You could look at this as parent-child relationships, component being the parent of the horizon table. Below the horizon table is horizon texture, and there's many textures in a single horizon, and so forth. And so it makes all these connections. And then because all the connections are defined, it makes it easy to query. You can write SQL queries down there in the bottom right here. You can write the code, or you can use the query builder to make queries. Soil Data Viewer is a companion tool, very important companion tool to the template. In fact, it uses the template database I just showed, a populated one, as an input. And what Soil Data Viewer really is, though, is the power of Soil Data Viewer is aggregation. So all of that complex stuff I just showed you here, the aggregation engine cuts through this and allows you to derive single values at the map unit level, the MU key level, using this back and hidden complex aggregation engine. You feed in parameters into it, simple little parameters. You hit a run button, it does its magic, and it spits out a very fairly accurate rating, or very accurate rating, that was developed over many years by programmers. So it looks so simple. You get a table and the new columns appended to it on the right. So here I'm looking at basically our soil polygon table in ArcGIS desktop ArcMap. So all those columns here, the first 6 are the spatial data, and then at the end is the available water storage. So I just picked one at random. It looks so simple to get that result, but there was a complex engine behind it that produced that. So again, this is a little out of sequence here, but Soil Data Viewer requires 2 inputs to run: the spatial data, which is the soil map unit polygons, and the Microsoft Access template, and then it runs aggregation, and it produces a thematic map. It joins the tabular and spatial together and makes this great map. Now, a lot of people just think of the map when they think of Soil Data Viewer. It looked like about maybe 2/3 of you have used Soil Data Viewer, and this is the sort of thing you think of. You want a clay map or a land capability class map or farmland map or whatever it is, and you get a great thematic map, and that's awesome. Maps are great. They communicate information so well to so many people, but that is the easy part of Soil Data Viewer, and we kind of get hung up on that part sometimes. Making the table behind the map, I just really want to emphasize this, that's the hard part. That is the aggregation engine, and it is extremely complex to do it correctly. Thousands of lines of code go into it. All right, so now we have some problems here, some warning signs are flashing with these products. With the Microsoft Access template, and this is minor, but it requires a license. Like I said, we want to be license free. Now, this license probably isn't the most expensive license in the whole world. It's just Microsoft, but still, we do require users to be able to have access. Much more importantly, much more limiting is the scale. You cannot put more than 2 GB of data into a single access database. What that means in practical terms is I'm in Oregon, and I've spent a lot of my career out here in the Northwest, or all my career in the Northwest, and a lot of my time in Oregon. I cannot take all the SSURGO data for Oregon and put it into a single access container, MDB file. It would be over 2 GB. It's just not possible. So it's quite limiting. Now, this was fine 20 years ago. People are thrilled with this product, and frankly, they still do get a lot of value out of it. But today, people want data over larger geographic areas, state level or larger. And also, people want to put the spatial data in the database. It's 2024. It's not 2004. We have solutions at our fingertips to put both spatial and tabular data into a single database container, and we should be doing that. And Access does not do that. So the spatial has to live outside of it. Also, very importantly, it's not accessible in ArcGIS Pro. Now, Esri, the company that produces ArcGIS Pro, is releasing new versions of it all the time. I still don't believe that any version that they've released recently recognizes the MDB file, and I don't think it's going to, as far as I know. I don't know of any plans for that to happen. Maybe some of you know differently, because we do have some GIS folks on here, but it's not anything you can read in ArcGIS Pro. This is actually a loss, as if you were working in ArcMap and ArcGIS Desktop, you could see the MDB file in there and use it within that software. And lastly, kind of an inside baseball here, but it's really difficult for our programmers to modify this thing. And what I mean by that is it's a template database which got the predefined tables. If we want to modify SSURGO and add a table, we have to modify this template. And it's kind of a one-off thing that somebody built a long time ago, and that person retired. They did a great job, but we don't have the inside knowledge of this. Now, we could certainly figure it out if needed, but we don't want to allocate our dollars or programmers' times to working with this antiquated product. So it's kind of causing us to be stagnated in our SSURGO data model, because we do want to add things to SSURGO, but we have to deal with this template database here and make sure this thing is still up and running. The new product that I'll be talking about that lives in SSURGO Portal, the new template database, is dynamic and can be updated really kind of in a day almost. It's very easy to update. All right, over to Soil Data Viewer and the limitations with this tool. This one requires a very expensive license. Last time I heard, it was $3,500 to get an Esri ArcGIS desktop license. Now, who's going to buy the ArcGIS desktop these days? I don't know. It's pretty much dead at this point. I mean, Esri is going to keep it around for another couple of years, maybe, but it's going to leave the USDA system soon. But if you were going to use it, it would require this expensive license. We don't want to do that to our customers anymore. You guys are fine internally to work with Esri software, ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Pro, because you don't have to pay for it out of pocket. We have many customers in Soils Data outside of the federal government that are small organizations, small groups, and they don't buy the Esri software. It's also very limited in scale. It can't exceed 2 GB either for 2 reasons. One, it uses the template database as an input, if you remember, so it's limited there to 2 GB, and the shapefile cannot be larger than 2 GB, and it uses a shapefile as an input. So again, I cannot make a nice thematic map for the state of Oregon with Soil Data Viewer, and that's not going to cut it any longer. 2004, that's probably fine. 2024, not so cool. And probably the, biggest elephant in the room is it only works in ArcGIS Desktop, ArcMap, and that's going away. In fact, I think it would be gone from our organization and the software center if it was not for Soil Data Viewer. We have an exemption basically to keep this software around longer than was originally intended, because Soil Data Viewer only works in ArcMap. Once we replace Soil Data Viewer and we give the folks that manage the
GIS software the green light, they're probably going to pull ArcMap out of the software center. So it breaks when ArcMap's discontinued. Many of our customers, many of the people maybe that you work with, don't have ArcMap any longer. We hear about it. We, being Tammy and I and Alex, who are on the Soils hotline, receive customer inputs that we hear, customer feedback. We hear from them that, hey, my organization doesn't have ArcGIS desktop any longer. When are you going to give me new Soil Data Viewer for ArcGIS Pro? This is a constant question we get. And then it offers limited output options. So if you run that rating, make that table, which I'm not showing there, but there's a table behind the map, and make the map. It's kind of temporary stuff in ArcMap. We want to give you the ability to create other file types from that. And then I'm not going to talk too much about GSURGO, but I'll just highlight a couple of the current limitations just so you're aware. And then, Alex will be going into a deeper dive on GSURGO. But it requires the expensive Esri license. Now, it does work in ArcGIS Pro, meaning the database will open ArcGIS Pro, and it will open in ArcMap, but you have to have the Esri license to get full functionality of GSURGO. And again, we're trying to get away from that a little bit because we don't want our customers to have to pay for that. And then there's an aggregation engine for GSURGO that's essentially Soil Data Viewer. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the same name, so it's a little confusing, but it's called Create Soil Map, and it's a tool in the Soil Data Development Toolbox, but that currently only works in ArcMap. Now, I think Alex has some plans to work on that. He'll speak to that later, but as of today, if you're a GSURGO user and you don't have ArcMap, you cannot do aggregation with the database. You kind of have a not useless product, but not a great product because you can't really drill through all those one-to-many relationships, all those complex table relationships without the aggregation engine. Okay, so on to SSURGO Portal, the savior here for all these problems, right? So we have 3 versions that will be referenced here, and I'm going to try and clean this up for you guys, and hopefully it's not too confusing. And I'll explain why we have 3 again. So first is SSURGO Portal Beta, and I'm not looking at the chat, but I believe there's a link in the chat to SSURGO Portal Beta. And this is the currently publicly available version that anybody can go download, and it's been out there since October of 2023. So I want to talk about that because that's going to be the official solution for another 2 months. If you're working with customers, that's probably the one they want to use for the next couple months. But we got this other one handed to us by our developers with all these new features in there that this audience here, I think, will be interested in. But it hasn't been tested. It hasn't been refined yet. It's not ready to be published. The supporting guidance documents haven't been written. This is SSURGO Portal Beta, the same one that's on the webpage, but it's enhanced. It has some new features. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'll actually demo it too. And then I'm going to talk about SSURGO Portal 1.0, which is not actually a developed application. It's under development, but I just want to talk about what we expect to have in it when it's all said and done in 2025, which is ultimately where we want to go. And at that point, we really have the solution for everything for the Soil Data Viewer and Access template. So again, this one slipped into this talk. If I was giving this talk 2 weeks ago, I would not have number 2 in here. It would have just been beta 1.0, but this was a recent addition. All right, let's talk about beta. So what is it? Beta is a new Python-based license-free and open source USDA application. And what it does is very simple, really. It creates empty geospatial SQLite SSURGO template databases. So not a Microsoft Access SSURGO template database, but a SQLite SSURGO template database that stores spatial data. And it allows you to batch import spatial and tabular SSURGO into the database. So you can load multiple soil survey areas at once. If you're in California, you can get all the California SSURGO, click a button and load all of it in, I don't know, half an hour, it depends how fast your machine is. And it'll build the California database, SQLite SSURGO template database with all the spatial and tabular in it. And so just to kind of cut through all these words here, what it is it's new and it's Python. It's license free. You don't have to pay for anything. That was our goal. It's, of course, an application, and it makes these new SQLite SSURGO template databases, and then it imports SSURGO data. And the bottom right shows the image of beta. It's very bare bones. We're probably make it a little prettier in the future, but not much. We're not going to have a lot of images and content in here. We just want it to be functional. So we released this on October 17th, 2023, kind of a soft release. We didn't widely advertise it. We didn't splash it all over Web Soil Survey. We just kind of wanted to get some users out there, get some feedback. And what it's doing, it's creating those SQLite SSURGO template databases. And if you know anything about SQLite, which I did not know anything about SQLite 4 years ago, but I've learned some things, is there are two versions of SQLite, two flavors that for storing spatial data. And there is a GeoPackage schema and a SpatialLite version. And both of those are SQLite files. And we made both because we didn't know which was better. So you can choose GeoPackage or SpatialLite. If you don't know anything about this, take the default settings when you use SSURGO Portal and just make the GeoPackage. It seems to be the better solution, but for now, both do exist. So they're both SQLite files. It's just different sets of tables and schemas for storing spatial data. Two different people created these open source solutions. And the cool thing about SQLite is there should be no limitations. It really works in anything that can read a SQLite file, which is really wide ranging. That includes QGIS, which is our open source version of ArcGIS Pro. It works with ArcGIS Pro, works with R, and it works with something called DB Browser, which is essentially Microsoft Access without the license requirements. And SQLite files can be read in lots of other things as well. So we think this will serve a large range of customers. Now, again, internally here in this audience, ArcGIS Pro is probably what you guys are going to use. That's good. Just use it, and we build it to work in ArcGIS Pro. But you may work with customers that don't have Pro. And so you know now that they should be able to use this new product. Whereas some of the other products we have, they could not use. It also allows batch importing and deleting of SSURGO, so you can also delete many survey areas at once too. And it's Python based. So why does it have this beta tag? Well, the reason we put that on there is it doesn't have everything we want yet. It's missing Soil Data Viewer. We want to create Soil Data Viewer, and we'll talk a lot about that here in a little bit. It doesn't have something called the SSURGO downloader. So remember, Alex talked about downloading SSURGO earlier. And you go to Web Soil Survey and you download SSURGO, and you have to download it one zip file at a time. There's 3,373 soil survey areas on Web Soil Survey as of today, and a few more will appear after October 1. That's a lot of clicks. That's a lot of zip files to download. The SSURGO downloader that we're going to put eventually into SSURGO Portal 1.0 will allow you to batch download SSURGO for areas using a variety of interfaces, so you don't have to click things one at a time. You want all the data for New England, you can go in and use a SSURGO downloader to get it all very quickly. It also is missing a rasterized version of the soil polygons. We want to have both a gridded version and vector version of those polygons. Vector is kind of like the source of truth. We use vector data to create all these things, but people like the gridded version too, especially when you're working over large geographic areas. Rasters work better in GIS. They're just quicker for symbolizing, quicker for processing data. So we wanted to deliver both. And SSURGO Portal Beta does not have the rasters yet. It also doesn't have any map interface in the application. So we didn't want to deliver a useless product, though. So when you go to the SSURGO Portal website, and I'll talk about this later in the demo, it has some temporary supplemental tools that will help you along. First, and very importantly, it has these downloader tools that Alex and several others contributed to creating. These are GIS tools that allow you to batch download many SSURGO data sets from Web Soil Survey at one at a time. So, or not one at a time, sorry, at one time. So you can get the entire state of California, the entire state of Texas, all the SSURGO if you want. I've downloaded all the SSURGO with these tools in 6 hours, which is actually pretty quick because it's a couple hundred gigabytes of data. And and it unzips the files for you too. So it's a pretty slick way of doing this. You don't actually ever even go to Web Soil Survey. You just use the tool and it finds the data on Web Soil Survey and brings it down to your machine. And I'll demo this in a little bit. And there's one for QGIS and one for ArcGIS Pro. Again, QGIS is just if you're working with customers that don't have ArcGIS Pro, they may want the QGIS tool. And then we have this thing called SSURGO On Demand that Jason Nemechek and Chad Ferguson put together, which is like Soil Data Viewer. It's an aggregation engine. However, it is not Soil Data Viewer. It has limitations and doesn't have everything in Soil Data Viewer, and it hasn't been thoroughly tested. So I really appreciate what they put together. It's a really nice tool, but it's a temporary solution while we work on Soil Data Viewer. So what you do is you make a database, you load some data into it, and then you open SSURGO On Demand, and you run a rating like clay content, or even an interpretation and dominant condition rating for dwellings with basements, and it'll stick a table into your database. And then you can go into ArcGIS Pro or QGIS and make maps, join the data together and make maps. So here's what SSURGO Portal Beta looks like. Again, just a zoomed in view of the application, and I'll show it. Pretty lightweight, not a lot to it. We wanted to try and keep it simple, although we are going to clean it up still and probably make it flow a lot better here in future versions. And here's the general workflow for working with SSURGO Portal Beta, because I'm kind of throwing a lot at you, so you might be thinking, well, what do I do with this exactly? How does this work? Well, if you were going to work with this, what we would say is go get some SSURGO, either directly from Web Soil Survey or using the bulk downloader tools. They are on the SSURGO Portal webpage. The link's in the chat. And after you get the data, open SSURGO Portal, get it up and running, follow the installation guides. It's not that hard. And create an empty database, a GeoPackage for Spatial Light. Just choose GeoPackage if you don't have a preference. And then import the SSURGO into the database, which should happen pretty quickly. And then get over into SSURGO Demand. SSURGO On Demand. So you leave SSURGO Portal, you open up SSURGO On Demand and create some data tables with that. It's pretty easy to use. And then go over to GIS and find your database that has all these tables in there, spatial and tabular tables, and join things together and make maps. And I'll demo this in a minute. All right, now on to the much more exciting one that I'm very thrilled to talk about, and that is the SSURGO Portal Beta, but it's enhanced, the one I just got last week. And I think you guys are going to want this too, because it has functioning Soil Data Viewer. That's right, we're done with the aggregation engine behind Soil Data Viewer. Now, it's not where we want it to be with 1.0. There's lots of cool things we want to add to it, things that we think you guys and others will want, but it has the aggregation engine that produces a table in the database. And a lot of hours went into getting this to work. It doesn't have the map yet. We will add the map. We're working on that for SSURGO Portal 1.0. So there's no thematic map output yet, but we'll get there. And this will replace SSURGO On Demand eventually. So this SSURGO Portal Beta Enhanced, probably at the end of October, early November, we're going to try and get this published onto the SSURGO Portal webpage as the official version, and we'll pull SSURGO On Demand down at that time. It also creates the rasters. So that's really cool. So we've solved two things. We have Soil Data Viewer and we have the rasters now. So you can get a rasterized version of the soil polygons. And I've been testing this out and it works quite well. And you can use that to make your thematic maps if you prefer the rasters over the vector version of the polygons. And it's got some improvements to the user interface. But it's going through final quality assurance. We have official testers on our team. They do thorough, detailed testing, 508 testing. We haven't done that yet. That's why we haven't published this enhanced version. But I'm happy to share it with this audience here as a demo version. And again, target release is late October, early November 2024, so in a couple months. Now, I said here, email me if you'd like an advanced copy, but Corey has a sign-up sheet that I'm not sure if she put anything in the chat yet, but Corey will take this on, and you can use her sign-up sheet if you would like a copy, and that will be our way to track who wants a copy of this. I can't send it to you today, because it's got a few things that need to be improved. But I feel like maybe next week, I got to see what our developers are able to do. I should be able to send it out. Might be, might be 2 weeks, might be a week, 2 weeks, we'll see. I don't want to give you something that we're just going to fix right away. So there's a few things that we know, a few wrinkles we need to iron out before we share this. But then I'll give it to this audience, and then I would love for people to try it out and give me feedback. Critical feedback is excellent. Not going to hurt my feelings. You can tell me the product's terrible if you want to. We want all feedback here because then we can make improvements.
The link is in the chat, Kyle, so we're ready to collect those folks who are interested.
Okay, great. Thank you, Corey. Yeah, so you just heard Corey, go to the chat if you want a copy of it. And I'm going to demo it too. So if you want to wait and see what it is and decide if you want a copy, you can come back to it later. But, it's not going to hurt you to grab a copy of it. All right, now on to the third one, the full version, where we want to go in the future. This is more of a vision. Under development, we have details to work out. This is going to have this built-in SSURGO downloader. So there's no more external GIS tools, and it's going to have a downloader with multiple ways, including a map interface for downloading SSURGO data. And our lead developer on this is doing some really cool stuff, and I like where he's going. He has some good vision about this, about making a user-friendly map interface for downloading SSURGO data. Could even see it, frankly, go on the Web Soil Survey one day. And then, of course, it's going to have the rasterized version of the soil map unit polygons with some additional details ironed out that are not included in this enhanced version. So there's some more we want to do there. And then it's going to have the built-in SDV, but that thing's going to have everything. So it's going to have the map. It's actually going to produce an LYRX file. And if you don't know what that is a layer file for ARC GIS Pro. And so the way it'll work is you're going to run a rating in SSURGO Portal 1.0, and then a map will appear, the pretty map with the colors, and then an LYRX file will be created, and you'll choose where to store it on your machine. It'll give you a default, location, but you can choose to override it. And then you go over into ArcMap and you bring that in, and it'll bring in all the spatial data in the map, and it'll make the map. So that's our way to try and recreate what Soil Data Viewer used to do, where it always outputs the thematic map, and it takes the burden off of you from having to join things together and make the map yourself. And so that's down here with the map interface. And then there'll be a improved user interface, improved installation process, and a consolidation of guidance documents. Release is targeted early 2025. We've asked our development team to target the end of February. We'll see if we can get there. Development is a slow process. If you ever get involved with it in your career, or if you're not already, it doesn't move as fast as you would like, but we're targeting early 2025, might be a little later. And eventually we'll post this thing on Web Soil Survey on the soil download page. It'll be there alongside the template database, but they'll coexist for some time. So we're not going to take that template database down too quickly. We're going to give people lots of leeway or heads up and the time to deal with the decommissioning of the template database, because we know some people have it integrated into applications and processes. And just to give you a sneak peek, this is what it looks like. So this is something that's under development. Here is SSURGO Portal 1.0, a development version, and we have a map added in, the downloader map. And so it's great to see that. It's going to be a cool user interface. In fact, we think we'll show all the soil survey areas here, and you'll just select and batch download data for any area in the country that you're interested in. Okay, so now this slide, I did not have a good place to put this in. It's just every time I give this talk, I can't find a good sequence of events. But I have to say, for SSURGO Portal, whatever version you're working with, you should get DB Browser. So if you're working with SSURGO Portal, I recommend you follow the instructions on the SSURGO Portal webpage and download DB Browser. If you're USDA, it's in the Software Center. It's a quick installation. There's not much to it, but it's free Microsoft access, essentially. Doesn't have everything Microsoft Access has, but it's a way of opening up the database and looking at the tables and the contents of the tables and seeing what's in there, and then submitting queries to the database, which, by the way, is significantly nicer to write SQL in DB Browser than Microsoft Access. So if you are somebody that writes SQL, you'll like this a lot better than Microsoft Access. So you can query the database, and you can export the results to external tables. So I highly recommend you grab this if you're going to be a SSURGO Portal user. All right, so I threw a lot at you, and Corey, you can go ahead and put that slide in the chat now. This slide here will pop up in the chat in a minute. So if you want a copy of it, you can, because there's 3 versions of SSURGO Portal I referenced, and I just want to try and highlight what's in all of these things. I'm not going to go through all this, but I just want to highlight the first row. The only one that's publicly available is SSURGO Portal Beta. The second column there here is the only one that's publicly available right now. And then the other area to highlight is down here, Soil Data Viewer, not in the beta that's publicly available, but there is a version of it in this enhanced version. And then, of course, it will be in 1.0. Rasters, not in beta, but is in the enhanced version and will be all worked out in SSURGO Portal 1.0. And the downloader, not beta, not enhanced, and will be in 1.0. Okay, I'm going to do a live demo now. And I'm going to live demo SSURGO Portal Beta. So this is the publicly available one. I'm going to go to the website, talk about what's on there, because there's too much information on there, frankly. So I'll kind of give you an overview of it. I'll highlight the installation process, although I can't demo it because I already have it installed on my machine. Not that it's that complicated. I just want to highlight where the information is about installing it. And then I'll demo a bulk download a GIS tool in ArcGIS Pro. And then I'm going to open SSURGO Portal. I'm going to get that SSURGO I download and create a database and populate it using SSURGO Portal. Then I'm going to open up SSURGO On Demand and run a rating, and then I'm going to make a map in GIS. And then I'll come back and do this one next. So let's get over to the web page here. Here's the SSURGO Portal web page. And then again, the link's in the chat somewhere, or you can Google it and find it. Now, there's a lot on here when you get in here, but if you're somebody who just wants to get to it right away, just go to the quick start guides. And if you're USDA, NRCS, and I think even maybe Forest Service, you can use this one here. This is for folks that are not in that category because there's two different ways to install Python. You have to install Python to make SSURGO Portal work. So I'm going to open up the USDA one, the quick start guides. So again, two versions, and you know whether you're CEC or not. Most of you are CEC. And you go ahead and open this up, and in here, it'll tell you to go get Python at step 2 from the Software Center. Right there, get this version. There's other versions in there, but get that one. SSURGO Portal will work with 3.9 and 3.11, but we recommend this one because we did all the testing around this version. And then once that's installed, which shouldn't take too long, you can go download SSURGO Portal here from this link, but make sure you disconnect from VPN. This is a new problem, a new wrinkle that popped up. There's some security certificates that were stopping us from properly installing SSURGO Portal initially when you're on the USDA VPN. You don't have to be in the office or out of the office or in a coffee shop. It does not matter. You just don't want to be on your USDA VPN. Just connect to Wi-Fi. Then click this link and it'll download a zip file that has the SSURGO Portal in it, the application. And then after it's downloaded, unzip it, and you will see this. I'm going to just show it to you here. I have it downloaded. And you'll get this file right here. It's a PYZ file, a Python zip application file. I'm not going to go into details about that, but that's what the file format is. And then you double click it the first time you run it. And you're going to, a CMD window, that black screen is going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, enter P to complete. This is going to install some additional libraries. It's very quick. And then it'll close the CMD window and then you're ready to go and you never have to do that again. That's just one time and you should have all the libraries until you get a new machine. And then you can go ahead and open that PYZ file. Second time you're up and running, you can shortcut it. You can do whatever you want with it and SSURGO Portal will open every time you click on it. Now, again, we're going to try and improve this and consolidate this installation process. Seems like a lot. It's actually pretty easy as long as you don't have a problem, but the steps are all right here in step 3. Also in this quick start guide is some getting started with SSURGO Portal. So there's that workflow chart here that highlights how to use it. And it talks about downloading SSURGO data from the Web Soil Survey or the GIS tools, which are down here. And then creating a database, step 1. Selecting the location of that SSURGO data you found, step 2. And then importing the SSURGO into the database. And then we talk about how DB Browser is recommended for viewing the contents and then using SSURGO on demand. And that's it. That's what's in the quick start guide. Now, in addition to the quick start guide, if you're somebody that wants more information, there is a detailed installation guide. I do want to highlight one thing in this guide here. This is for people that might have some problems and just need a little additional guidance during installation. But let me open this up. Hopefully this doesn't take too long to open. Shouldn't. Bear with me here. I did this yesterday and it was just fine. All right, well, this is kind of hung up at the moment. Let me try the other one. Well, like I said, I was having some home network issues, so I'm going to let that go. In the installation guide is some information about setting up your geo package or spatial light databases so they will open in DB Browser by default. So when you make a database and stick it in your Windows Explorer, some directory, you want to set it up so when you double click on it, it just opens DB Browser. It's a very nice feature if you're going to work with this a lot. So it's at the end of the guide. It's pretty easy to do and I highly recommend it. And I'll kind of highlight how I have it set up on my machine. There's also a full user guide here if you need more information. There's an overview of the product and technical specifications, the beta version. So a lot of content. But again, you just want the quick start guide for the most part. And then here are the downloader tools. So down here are the bulk downloaders. Right there. There's the ArcGIS Pro one and the QGIS version and instructions. If you think you need them, you probably don't even need them. If you're a GIS user, you probably can just do this without the instructions. They're not that complicated. I have it installed already, so I'm not going to go through it. Here's SSURGO On Demand, the aggregation tool. There it is. There's the tool and the instructions. And then also, if you're somebody that wants data over huge geographic areas, we saved you the time because it will take a while to make one of those databases. And there's one right here. You can download this very large database that's roughly 30 gigabytes in size. It's going to take a while, so it's maybe a bit of an overnight job. Make sure you're disconnected from VPN because that throttles download speeds. And you can download this and you'll have all the SSURGO for the continental United States, the CONUS, lower 48, Alaska, and all the island jurisdictions, which I like Alex's use of jurisdictions. I've always said territories, but that's an improvement in the language. And so you're going to get, everything out in the Pac Basin, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, the Virgin Islands, all of it in a single container, and actually has rasterized versions already built in there too. And here's some more information about DB Browser and a link to the webpage if you want more information about that. Okay, so that was, there's a lot here, but again, the quick start guide is the main thing to get you going. Now I'm going to go into ArcGIS Pro, and I have the ArcGIS Pro version of the downloader tool installed, and it is telling me I have an error message. Let me see if this will work. Why is that happening? Oh, I know why. I have to repoint to it. Hang on a second. I think I moved the location accidentally. There it is. Okay, so here's the tool. Close that one. It's a very simple tool. So when you download it, that's what you'll see, a toolbox, and then this will be in here, and then there's the script. There shouldn't be much. This should open right up. I'm getting a little latency on my end today, so I don't know why things are moving so slow. Normally it pops right up.
It's always that way. When
Bear with me here. It should not be this slow for you when you run it. What's that?
Oh, the first time you open a tool in ArcGIS Pro, it's always slow. It's Pro, not your
It takes a little while. Okay. So when this tool opens up, there's only a few boxes here, and you're going to search for data by area symbol. Remember, our area symbols are 5 characters, and the first 2 characters are alpha characters, and they're the state symbol. So in this example, we're going to make a database for Delaware, and I'm going to put in DE here, asterisk, and so I'm going to get all soil survey areas in Delaware, which there are 3 of them. And while it's doing its searching for that data, I'm going to go ahead and choose my output location. I got to tell it where to stick this data I want to download. I've created something on my C drive called SSURGO. There's nothing in this folder right now. So I'll show you that right here. I'm on C SSURGO, and it's empty. There's nothing in there. So now I'm going to come here and see that it found from Web Soil Survey. Again, it is going, just to be clear, it is going here to this link, the same upstream source as Web Soil Survey for the data. So let me minimize this. And everything is slow. Great. Well, Web Soil Survey is spinning, but it's coming from this location of download soils data. I was going to show you exactly what I was getting, but I'm going to switch back to the downloader. And with the latency I'm having, I'm hopeful this works. So I'm going to select all 3 of these here. I'm going to hit add. Try that one more time. Okay, there they all are. Again, normally this all works much faster. I'm not sure what's going on. I practiced this yesterday. It went really quick, but here's the survey areas for Delaware. Now, I could have done this for California or Texas, and there would be many more in the list, but it's going to go ahead and get all of them. So it's running right now. You can view the details of what it's doing, and it's going to use multi-threading, so multiple cores on your machine to process this, this data here. I'm afraid it may take a little while today, but it's starting right there. And so while that's downloading, I'm going to go ahead and get SSURGO Portal up and running. So it's going to stick everything. Right, I was worried I might get an error here. Alex, you know what this error message is?
Let's see. I was typing a response. I didn't see what happened. Okay.
Let me try this here. Bear with me. I'm going to switch. No, I don't have that. Never mind. Let me. I'm going to try and run it one more time. See what missing parameter. Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to close the tool and try it one more time. Hey.
To me, it looked like you had everything set up correctly. This tool was working very stably for folks. So I'm not sure why it's taking longer than I would expect to open and be giving you that error message.
Hang on a second. I'm going to stop sharing. Switch connections. Okay, on. I had to switch connections yet again. All right, I'm going to try this one more time, and if it fails, I'll go a different route. I almost wonder if I'm having a license issue. Loader, and I assure you it works just fine. I've never had that problem before. Let's see if I can download a data package out of here. So yeah, here's the download section of Web Soil Survey, and you could come in here and download it directly. In fact, actually, I have all the Delaware data downloaded already on my machine, so I'm just going to go and grab it here to make the database. We'll just do this one here. I'll just do one soil survey area. I'm going to go and put that back in my SSURGO folder. All right, so now I'm going to open up SSURGO Portal and pretend I downloaded that with the tool, which again normally works. I don't know why it didn't work this time. And I'm going to go get SSURGO Portal and open it up here. So this is where I downloaded SSURGO Portal. We'll see the application load up. And I'm going to come in here. Well, I moved a little quick there. Hang on. So when you come in here, the first thing you need to do is go to step 1 to create select or create a database. And I'm going to come here and choose the location of my database. The file exploring looks a little different. We could not use Windows File Explorer in our library, so we had to do something a little different. But this is, you get used to it pretty quickly. I'm on C by default. I could change that manually to D or E if I wanted to this way, but I'm happy with C. And I'm going to choose a location for my database that I'm going to create. I have a folder that I call databases. I choose that and I click this button to create a new database. Here's where you can choose GeoPackage or Spatial Light. I'm going to just let it use GeoPackage the default, and I'm going to name this Delaware. And I'm going to hit Save Database. And now it's taken me back here and it's chosen that database. And now I need to go to some SSURGO data. I'm going to go browse to, step 2 here. And I'm going to browse to the location of SSURGO data that I downloaded, or pretend I downloaded. And I'm going to come here to this folder on my C drive, And there's that SSURGO data. Now here, I don't want to go too far because if I open this up, I'm in the folder. And if I try and set this as my location, I click this button here to set the location of the SSURGO data, I'm going to get errors. See, it says you don't have the right stuff. Some checks were run and saying you don't have the right contents. I need to be above that. I need to see the 5-digit code here to know I'm at the right location, and then I can click finalize. So then I come here and I select the SSURGO data. So I'm on this import SSURGO data screen. I can select it. Now, if I chose, if there's multiple soil survey areas in my directory, they would all appear here in the table, which is what I was going to show you in the original example. And you could select them all and hit import SSURGO data. You can also see the contents of your database as well. So again, I'm pointed at this database, but there's nothing in it. It's empty right now. So I got to load some data into it first. So I hit import SSURGO data. This screen pops up. This should take about 10 to 15 seconds at most to load all the SSURGO tabular and spatial data into the database. And here it shows me what was imported. That's all done. It took 12 seconds, which is really fast. And I hit next. And now it brings me back to the SSURGO data and database tab, and it shows me what's in the database. I could delete this if for some reason I wanted to. Most people aren't going to want to delete, but I'm basically done here. So now I can go, I made a database, I loaded data into, so now I can come back to my directory here, the C drive, SSURGO Portal Beta. I made the database in here, and there it is. Now note the database icon. I mentioned the installation guide on the SSURGO Portal webpage tells you how to configure a geo package so it opens in DB browser by default. That's why I have that database icon. You won't see that until you set things up to do, properly, which isn't that hard to do. It's all in the instructions. So I can just double click on this thing and open it up in DB browser, and it'll open DB browser right up. And here it is. Here's all the SSURGO data. I could click on a table I'm familiar with, like Sea Horizon, hit browse table. And there's all the data in the database. And I can also browse around this way. And I can see the spatial data here. I could also write a query. So I could come in here and say select table. And it'll show me everything in my map unit table. So you can write queries pretty easily. So that's DB browser. It shows you what's in the database. But that's not really what you want to use. You want to use ArcMap, and I'm very hopeful ArcMap will play nicely with me here now and work. So I'm going to refresh. I'll hit refresh this directory. So it picks up my new database with all the data in it. I'm going to browse down here, and I'm going to come here, and I should see the database. And there it is. There's my geo package. Very much like a geo database. And here's all the data in there. The spatial data gets sorted to the top. Now they all start with main dot, all the tables in here. I don't know why GeoPackage does that. I don't know if we can fix that. So we kind of have to live with that main dot name that shows up in ArcGIS Pro. But I can drag this in and it should show my polygons. Things are moving way too slow for some reason, though, so normally they would draw instantaneously. I don't know what's going on. I think they must have known I was doing a live demo today. And then here's all the tabular data in the database. But again, this data is not too helpful without aggregation. So we have this tool. Again, this is SSURGO Portal Beta, the one that's publicly available. And we have this tool called SSURGO On Demand, so SOD, SSURGO On Demand. I downloaded this from the SSURGO Portal webpage already. When the instructions are in there to work with it, it's pretty simple. So here's the tool. It's a PYZW file. And I double click on this thing. I'm not in SSURGO Portal. I'm outside of SSURGO Portal. And when you open it, you get a screen that asks you if you want to work with properties or interpretations. I'll do properties. Doesn't matter. And then I have to choose a database. So I'm going to point at that geo package I just created, which happens to be right here. So this is the one I created and loaded data into. And now I can come in here. There it is. Okay. And I'm going to choose weighted average, and we'll make a sand map here, total sand in the 50 to 100 meter zone. And I'm going to hit run, and it'll run very quickly, and it's going to stick a table in your database. It doesn't tell you that that happened. This is kind of a lightweight tool, but it stuck a table in the database. I can actually see this in DB Browser now. If I come back to Browse Data and refresh the contents of my database, I'll see I believe at the top of the list, there's my SSURGO On Demand table with the sand rating. So it's added that to the database. I can now come to ArcGIS Pro and refresh the contents of the database here and see that same table. And then here I think it sorts it alphabetically. And there it is. And I'm going to drag that in. Here's the table. I'm going to open the attribute table and show you what's in there. Note it has the MU key, which is critical for joining to the spatial data, and it has the sand total. So now I'm going to come up here. I'm going to close this attribute table, and I'm going to join that to the table I just made on MU key, the critical joining field. So I choose MU key from both the polygon and from the table. I hit OK. And the way things are going, this will probably take about 20 minutes, but should take about 2 seconds. And if it doesn't work, I'll have to skip through this, but trust me, you can join it and make a map. I'm just going to try and close this and see if the join worked here.
I think perhaps one of
I've
the
never
reasons
had so
why
many
you're,
problems in ArcGIS Pro. Nothing like
I
a
think it's
live
'cause
demo.
you're not connected to the VPN.
Am I not on
And it's-
VPN?
I don't know. Oh, you are. Okay. Never mind. That disproves that theory.
Well, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, and I'm hesitant to disconnect from Arc Pro and reconnect. So what I'm going to do is just let you know that you can come in here normally, go to symbology, and make a map on the sand content. So I'm going to skip that part here now and just go to the because I'm running very long, and get to this version here, which is the one you all want. So this is the enhanced version that I'm going to demo, and I'm not going to download data. Thankfully, I'm going to create a database with the new version of SSURGO Portal. I'm going to populate it, and I'm going to make a raster this time. And then I'm going to use Soil Data Viewer to make a rating instead of SSURGO On Demand. And then I was going to make a raster map in GIS. Now, I don't think that's going to work. We'll see. And also make a vector map. In fact, I am going to go ahead and just close Pro while I run SSURGO Portal and reopen it. Maybe a restart will help. So while that's booting up, I'm going to go in and open the new version of SSURGO Portal, the enhanced version that I have stored right here. So I'm in a different folder now. I forgot. I need to close. I believe I need to close a couple things before I load it up here. And try that again because it used the cookies from the previous one. Okay, here's the new version. So this CMD window, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. When you reload SSURGO Portal, this thing stays open. This is the Python server that's running the application. It says do not close up here. Don't close this or you'll kill SSURGO Portal. So just let that run in the background. So this is the version I'm going to share with you guys. And you're going to get this annoying message every time you run it because it's a demo version. And we're trying to remind you to go to the webpage and look for new versions that are out there. And we put this in case it's shared with others. You can share it with others if you want to. Try and track who you share it with though, so that you can let them know if we update it. But it does just say demo. It's all a demo version. It's not an official version. And you have to hit acknowledge every time you run it. So it looks a little different already than the other one. There's a new tab over here for Soil Data Viewer. But it's basically the same core functionality. And I'm going to come here and make a new database, just like I did before. And I'm going to browse to that folder here, SSURGO Portal Beta Enhanced. And I'm going to click on Databases. And I'm going to create a new database, just like I did before. And I'm going to create the GeoPackage version. I'm going to hit Save Database. This will be a little bit different though, because we had to handle the raster that was created. So what actually happened with this is when you create the database, this folder is automatically generated by the application, this Delaware_geo package, and the database is put in there. So I didn't create that folder. I chose this as my directory where to put it. And then it stuck this in here for me, and below it is the database. And the reason we did that is because when you make the rasterized version of the polygons, they don't live in this file, they live next to it. And so we wanted it all packaged together in the same folder so things didn't get disconnected. Now, we spent a lot of time trying to get a rasterized version of the polygons to live within the database. And while it's possible to put rasters in geo packages, they didn't work right in ArcGIS Pro. So we had to create them outside of the geo package, and we had to put them together in this folder. So it's a little different than the beta version. But anyway, I created my database. And now I'm going to choose the location. I'm going to go step 2, same workflow, and choose the location of the SSURGO. But here we've improved this a little bit. Remember how I said you could go too far in the directory? Here we now detect that you're at the right level, and we kind of stop you here. Now you can override it if you want to, and you can drill down too far, but now you don't want this location. You want to be up here, and the system by default will limit you here to the right location. It says, it looks like you have the right stuff to go ahead and select. So I select that here. It's a different button in this version. And then I'm going to come back here and import again. But before I import, I want to note these advanced options. I didn't talk about those previously, and all of them are the same between beta and beta enhanced, except for this last one. We added the raster. So see how that's clicked by default? You're going to get a 10-meter grid of the polygons when you run this version. The other options here are to load only tabular data, which there are reasons to do occasionally. Disable dissolve of the polygons, and add the sub rules for interpretations if you're interested in that. Most people probably won't play with these advanced options. I don't think most of you need to worry about them. But here's where you could toggle on and off creation of the raster. It is set to create the raster by default. So I'm going to hit import SSURGO, and this time it's going to load the SSURGO in the database and then create a raster. So again, we wanted the raster to live in the geo package, and maybe someday we can get that figured out. But the way we create the raster using something called GDAL just did not conform to Esri's ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro would not recognize as a raster. It actually worked just fine in QGIS, but in ArcGIS Pro it was a problem. So now it's imported the data. Now it's generating the raster here. We're going to clean all this up in a future version of this so you get better messaging about exactly what's happening. But the raster is being built as we speak. And we're going to see if ArcMap is, or if ArcPro is working with me now. Seems to boot it up normally. Looks like everything's done there. So I've now should see in here the raster. So note again, here's the folder it created. And in there now is a database, and then these all constitute the raster file. This is the actual TIFF raster that'll render the image, and these are supporting files that make it work well in ArcGIS Pro, such as pyramids and statistics in an attribute table. And if ArcGIS Pro was working, I would be able to load this raster up. Let me see if I have ArcMap now. So I think I'm going to pause there. Unfortunately, I don't want to take any more time, but believe me, you can see the raster. You can load it in here. And Alex, the join is working just fine now, so you can join that data to the raster. Oh, I forgot the one thing before I move on. I'm going to hit next here. The most important thing, soil data viewer. So I'll come back to that in a minute, I guess. So here's the soil data viewer tab. The whole ArcGIS Pro issue's throwing me off a little bit. So in Soil Data Viewer, this is going to look very familiar to many of you if you used Soil Data Viewer before, or if you've used Web Soil Survey. This is the same set of things that you see under the Soil Data Explorer tab in Web Soil Survey. So if you're a Web Soil Survey user, if you come in here and run any suitabilities and limitations for use or soil properties and qualities and all these ratings in these folders, you're going to get the same thing now in SSURGO Portal. They're all right here. In fact, I can come in here and make a a flooding map now under water features, which I'll do for my new database. And we put a lot of time and effort into these things. So I can come in here and choose flooding from April to September and hit generate rating. And in no time at all, it ran a rating. And if ArcGIS Pro is working, which maybe it is now, I can go see that rating in my database in here. Yay, it seems to be working now. Good. So I'm in that folder. This is where I created the database with the enhanced version. Here's the database. Here's the raster. I just ran Soil Data Viewer, and there's a new table now added here called ratings. Right there it is. There's the output. And I can add in that raster now, or the vector data. Doesn't matter. I'm going to try the raster. See, there it is. All right, something worked. So here's the raster for the area, and I'm going to join that now to the rating. I'm going to join on MU key. I think this is going to work well. And now I can symbolize. So I should see if I open the attribute table, there's the flooding information joined up to the raster, and now I can symbolize and use unique values. It's going to default to the MU key value initially, but I'm going to change that in a second to the flooding frequency. And there it is. So there's my flooding frequency map for Delaware. Now, of course, you can make this map for anything. And I could do the same thing by joining to the polygons. Okay, so just one last note here. There's a ton of stuff in here in Soil Data Viewer. And just to be very clear about this, it is, again, the same exact ratings that you get on Web Soil Survey. We expect the same results. However, not everything's been tested in here. This is why one of the reasons we're not publishing this right away. So I'll share this with you guys when we think it's at a good place in a week or two. But you may notice some discrepancies between Web Soil Survey and what you're getting out of this product. Please let me know if you see any discrepancies so we can fix them. So with that said, Corey, and all the problems I had, I would open it up for questions, but we probably should just turn it over to the next section and save the questions for later.
Yes, and actually Alex has done an excellent job running along, answering questions in the chat as you've spoken. And I think having trouble on a live demo is actually pretty real life, and that's what a live demo is all about. So no problem. Alex, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get going with your presentation. And folks, we are going to be definitely taking up our whole 2 hours. And if it sounds like conversation is running well, we will go past our time slot. If you need to exit because you have the meetings, etc. after that, we totally understand. If folks are able to hang on, if there's more discussion, happy to have people stay on afterwards. With that, Alex, let's wrap this up.
I think there's like 2 questions in the chat that you might want to address there. One's related to having multiple versions of SSURGO Portal. And then I've been having some good conversation with Jackie Reeder. You might want to follow up in the conversation, see if I covered it, or you might have further explanation. But with that, let me set up my next presentation. Let me queue it up here. Ready to share now. Okay. So Kyle has just presented what I consider a gorgeous application, the SSURGO Portal application that's now getting enhanced the Soil Data Viewer functionality, which is totally awesome. I'm going to give you a brief update on the Soil Data Development Toolbox for ArcGIS Pro, which emulates a lot of what we had in ArcMap, but it is under construction. There's a few so those who are at the Geo Summit, there's a brief update at the end. Otherwise, it's that's kind of where the status is with that. So this is compatible with ArcGIS Pro 3X. It's recoded and optimized, and there's several tools from the previous version in ArcMap that have been combined. There's also a new what I call GeoSurgo 2.0 data model, And again, this toolbox is under construction. So it combines the so the bulk download combines the functionality of the 3 former download SSURGO tools from the previous version. So before you had by area symbol, map, and survey symbol, all those are underneath. All that functionality is encoded in this one script, along with the added additional method to download those SSURGO. Remember those SSURGO, those zip files. This is essentially the same bulk downloader that Kyle presented, but this is housed inside of the Soil Data Mill Toolbox with a couple other enhanced functions. And I'll show that in a second. First, let me go through. What I'll do is I'll go through this presentation and I'll quickly show it you live in ArcGIS Pro. So the bulk SSURGO download allows you to, you first would select a method, whether you want to select by area symbol or survey name. You can also select by using the soil survey boundary layer or by another geography, such as a county layer, MLA layer, or hydrology layers. So multiple criteria can be inputs, such as alphanumeric or a character delimited. For example, you could put TX. Well, actually, let's see what the example here. I have Rhode Island and Connecticut. You can download, you could specify it to query all surveys that are from Rhode Island or Connecticut, and then it would list all those soil surveys. You can select all with this when you hit that that drop-down menu up here, or you can select individual surveys. So that's the bulk downloader for the Soil Data Management Toolbox looks like right now. And it doesn't care how those queries are delimited. So again, by soil survey boundary layer, so you get the most current version of the soil survey boundaries is always available in Web Soil Survey at this link. And with that, you can then, with a selected set in that feature layer, you can then use that as the means of bulk downloading. And then, of course, as I mentioned, you can use an ancillary geography, such as a watershed or MLRA or NRCS zone, etc. This option requires also the soil survey boundary layer from Web Soil Survey. And of course, that ancillary geography, as it'll do a select by intersection behind the scenes for you to select those soil surveys. So this tool has been optimized to leverage multi-threading, both this one and the tool that Kyle presented. And it unzips the download while still in memory, so that also is an enhancement. So it's about 8 to 9 times faster than the previous bulk downloader that we had in ArcMap. And for example, when I did this a while back with the state of Arkansas, which has 70 soil surveys, it took 18 minutes in ArcMap and 2.5 minutes in this current version, ArcGIS Pro. So quite a bit less time waiting for that bulk download to occur. And that's the same with, you should have a similar experience with the bulk downloader that Kyle described. So the next step, then, you've downloaded your data. You have all those SSURGO data packages that we talked about that don't have any relationships. They're just a bunch of text files and shape files in a folder, not very useful. Now you want to put those into a relational database, into a file geodatabase in this case. Kyle explained how to put those into a geopackage, which has a template that instantiates those relationships. This tool does a similar thing, but with a file geodatabase structure. And like those of you who've used GSurgo, it's what you're used to. And you can do this by, you could say, hey, I want to create by state tiles. You can do a custom geography or by map. You can by all those, or you can do it by everything that's downloaded in that in a folder. So you can say, hey, make a file geodatabase with all the SSURGO packages that I have in this directory, essentially. So that'd be select, and then you can select from that too. So those are the 4 options. Select by download, by what you have downloaded in your SSURGO data sets. You can specify states. You can specify with a selected set from your soil survey boundary layer, or you can give it an ancillary geography and it'll build a file geodatabase with those relationships encoded based on one of those 4 construction methods. So yeah, so by default, the file geodatabase tool will create the value 1 and dominant component tables. Actually, that's no longer under construction. That's completed. I meant to scratch that off. So the value 1 table and dominant component table functionality is now complete since the last time I presented. And that's nice because a lot of the logic that's used for aggregation for the create soil maps, I had to code for that to create that value 1 table. So some of the engine has been built for the aggregation that is still under construction. So one thing to note about this new 2.0 version is how the co-interp table has been constructed. So a lot of times for the previous version in ArcMap, CPs, they had already encoded it so that the co-interp table only had the main interpretations, not the sub rules. If that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about it. Usually all anyone ever uses is the main soil interpretations, with the exception that many of you use the NCCPI commodities, which are actually sub interpretations to the overall NCCPI index. Another enhancement that both SSURGO 2.0 and the GeoPackage version have is that we've dissolved the MU polygon feature into a multi-part feature. So there's only one record per map unit key as opposed to multiple records, which for general use, that's optimal. This is not, of course, optimal if you're doing any kind of editing, but we don't recommend using the SSURGO format for editing. So the GSURGO file geodatabase version 2.0 has all the keys of an index, including MU key, and the interpretation tables, as I mentioned, have been restructured. So those are. I'll talk about why I've done that. One of the reasons is it's much more concise. I've added one more relationship in the co-interp table, and some of it added a helper table to make it more concise. In ArcMap, GSURGO 1.0 took 45 minutes to build the state of Arkansas and came out at just under a gigabyte in size. With this new concise framework where I've restructured the co-interp table and we dissolve the MU polygon into a multi-part feature, it only takes 10 minutes to construct, and it's half the size. And the draw speeds and sort speeds are much faster with an ArcGIS Pro compared to the version 1.0. So there's an efficiency and an improvement with the size. So the functionality of the Create GSURGO raster tool is largely the same. So this is, as Kyle talked about, the SSURGO Portal tool also has an option to create, the enhanced version has the option to create a raster. And so does the file geodatabase tool in ArcGIS Pro does also. The grid code value represents the numeric key, and then your key field remains a string data type to enable joining with GSURGO 1.0 features. So the processing time is pretty similar in ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. It was 8.5 versus 8 minutes. There wasn't much of a difference. I want to look at creating an external GeoTIFF version. It won't be that difficult. It's just another thing to do in the future for those who don't want to have the raster living inside of the file geodatabase. Perhaps you want to use it in more other open source applications. The naming convention has also been changed. Formerly, the raster was denoted as map unit raster with an underscore, and then the cell size resolution. Now it's just going to be MU raster to emulate the naming conventions of MU polygon and MU point and SA polygon, etc. So that's just to be consistent in the naming and be a little more concise in naming length. So for rasters with a non-projected coordinate system, such as a WGS 84, a uniform pixel size in arc seconds is now done regardless of latitude. In the past, it tried to calculate the resolution in, like, let's say you wanted a 10-meter GSURGO raster and you had it in WGS 84. It would have tried to emulate something in arc seconds that was approaching 10 meters. Now, no matter what, it'll be 1/6, 1/3 arc seconds, kind of emulating the pattern of 3-dep. In fact, it will snap to a 3-dep raster as far as the pixel alignment is concerned with this version. So the scripts have been, the structure of the tool has been changed too. It uses a PYT format, which gives us a little more allows me to customize the front end a little more. But it also has a module structure. We've included doc strings. We've been a little stricter about adhering to PEP 8 style guide for Python code. And the code is also much more succinct. For example, the create geodatabase went from over 3,000 lines of code to just over 1,100 lines of code. The download tool, likewise, is less than half, and same with the create raster. And so that makes it, some of that's because there was a lot of band-aids put on the former version over the years, and there was a lot of pulling of band-aids and removing of dead end pieces of the script. But a lot of it was just because it was completely rewritten with more modernized built-in functionality of Python. So as I mentioned, the value one table and dominant component table, that tool is complete, works very efficiently, very fast, like 2 seconds to run that. But the create soil map tool, which is the tool that Kyle referenced, which emulates the functionality of Soil Data Viewer, which is the aggregation tool, that's still under construction. I'll show you where it's at, but it's not ready to push out yet. There's still a lot of bit of work to do there, maybe even a lot. And there's some other things that I want to add, such as simply adding the national mapping symbol. I'm probably not actually going to explore looking at state templates, but it's a possibility. But we'll certainly look at including merging and clipping the database and other batch options. For example, if you're this one request I've had is the state of Oregon, for example, they have a soil survey that straddles the state line, and the clipping would be not just a spatial clip, but actual tabular clip. It would clear out any map units that are exclusively, say, in California, not in Oregon, that soil survey, et cetera. So yeah, I am just going to move over to showing you that GIS Pro and showing what we have so far functionality wise. Let me close this. And okay, I see a question from John. Could there be an option to create? Yes, there will be an option. In fact, I'll just show you that right now. Since you asked that question, let me go ahead. I have my ArcGIS Pro blown up, so it's easier to read, but it's kind of squishy right now because of that. So the question that was asked by John is, when you're creating, you've already downloaded your data. There will be right down here at the bottom a version of the ability to do GSURGO traditional. I should just put 1.0. I was debating naming conventions there. And also you can uncheck the concise. Warning though, you're probably used to the concise version other than the multi-part, because this will blow up your co-interp table and it'll probably more than double the size of your database if you don't go concise. But traditional is probably what some of you want. But again, the co-interp table is still there in traditional. One other difference is the map unit keys are numeric instead of strings. That also is another reason why it's leaner and more efficient. All the other tables are still, the relationships are still the same. But yeah, let's go back here to the bulk download. So just like the one that Kyle showed you, you would just, I'm just going to throw things here for now. Let's put in the junk folder for today. And here you would specify how you want to select the surveys you want to download. I'm just going to go by area symbol. It immediately gives you a saying, hey, you need to tell me more. And so here I'm just going to go, since Delaware is so small, all surveys, Delaware, hit tab. It populates this choice menu. You can select them individually, or you can come up here and do select all and add them. And I don't want that. And you just hit run, and it should be done shortly. Well, that's running. Put that up there so we can watch the progress. Let's go to the catalog. Get this tool queued up. So to create the GSurgo, that's the raster version, sorry, wrong tool. To create a database with all the relationships, you need to specify where those surveys have been downloaded. And so I would go to that junk folder, and I'm just going to do select from those in that folder, and it immediately recognizes that I have 3 SSURGO packages in that folder. I'm going to select all 3 of those, and you need to specify a location for that. I'm just going to, again, go to my workspace and put it in the junk folder and give it a name. And for most of you, you're going to be specifying lower 48. This is important because it's relevant to the projection that it'll choose. If you do want WGS 84, you just pick world. And I'm going to go with the concise version, and hopefully this doesn't blow up. But it did, of course. When it was working a while ago. In fact, it was working just last week. But that's how the live demo has been going today. But that would create a GSurgo database. Clearly need to do some sanding there. And then the next tool that you would run in the sequence would be to create the GSurgo raster. And again, that would take about a couple minutes. So let's see here. Based on time, I'm probably going to have to call it at that. So that is the base. One other thing I'll just show you. This is the aggregation tool that's being created. One thing I wanted to show y'all is that it now has the ability to search the attributes. So I've always found it a hassle to look for, I want clay. Now if I type in clay, it'll give me all the SDV soil attributes that have clay in the name. And so I can hit, I want % clay. And then another thing that's different is you can put in multiple depth ranges. Oops. And let's say I want 0 to 50. And so that's another enhancement that will be there. But again, this tool, the back end has not been completed, and there's still some sanding and building to do on the front end. But those are some of the enhancements here. Is you can put in multiple depth ranges for aggregating from the component horizon tables, and you can also search those soil attributes more quickly. Or if you're a traditionalist, you can go back to the categories and specify the category and then specify the soil attribute. I'm thinking if you're like me, you're going to want this. I'll also have later on an option to query any attribute from any of the main tables, but those will be kind of more like user beware type. But otherwise, that is, I better cut it off there because of time. Corey, I don't know if we probably don't have time for questions, but I will linger. You guys can directly message me, or we can just use this meeting chat, and I can field some questions offline that way.
Yeah, awesome. Kyle and Alex, can you guys both put your contact information in the chat? I just put a quick 3-question poll asking folks for their thoughts on our session today. Also, I feel like we did a fairly good job on answering questions as they came up in the chat. Is there anyone who had a question that was not asked in the chat that would like to ask it now, or would you like to confirm with, okay, sharing the video. So this video will be posted to the Soil Plant Science Division's YouTube channel, along with any other ancillary information, including the SSURGO Beta Enhanced contact information if you'd like to get a hold of that. Definitely happy to continue to have folks respond. And any other questions real quick before we go? If anyone can please take a chance, hopefully folks have an opportunity to do my poll real quick on how the session went, that would be great. If not, otherwise, thank you so much for all your time today. Thanks everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now.